Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. Today we want to discuss Oswaldo Cabrera. The impact this young man made on this team towards the end of the season, down the stretch, was just truly remarkable. Really injected himself into the mix as a potential future solution. Not only as an outfielder, but potentially as one of those like super utility options. Like, look at DJ LeMahieu, ability to play most of those infield spots. Oswaldo Cabrera can do the infield and the outfield, which makes him even more valuable to this team. He's like Marwin Gonzalez when he didn't suck. And I guess he's a switch hitter too, so it kind of makes sense. But when you're looking at how Oswaldo Cabrera has made an impact on this team, you look at his slugging, you look at his flashiness in the outfield and the defensive runs saved above average, and all the metrics we're going to list for you guys today, but also just the clubhouse, value he has, that intangible leadership quality that he contains really helps this team in many ways, more ways than one. So I'm excited to discuss Oswaldo Cabrera, what his role could be moving forward in the 2023 season and beyond. Before we do so, Ryan, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great. The Yankees, as you mentioned with Oswaldo Cabrera, there are a lot of lanes to go here, right? He could be starting at second base, shortstop, left field, maybe right field if unfortunately we lose Judge, right? Third base. I mean, there are plenty of positions you could put this guy. He's played some first base even. And he's done all of these things with great defensive value. And, he hit pretty well. He had a 111 WRC plus. He got progressively better throughout the season. One of the big things that was an issue with Cabrera to start out his major league career was he would expand from the strike zone a lot, and he had a high swinging strike rate. And those things caused him to really struggle early on because when you put up really poor plate discipline, you're not someone who you can rely upon to throw out a high average. And without a high average, it's hard to put up a high OBP. All those things, getting on base, those are important factors to a player's skill set. And, Cabrera's a smaller guy in terms of his stature, right? He's 5'10". He's not, the biggest guy in the world, but he did add weight between, the 2019 and 2021 season during the COVID pandemic year. And he added power, and we saw some of that power. We've seen him be able to barrel up the ball quite a bit. Do I think that Cabrera is someone who's going to go out and, crush 30-something home runs? No. But I do look and I say, if the trends that we saw towards the end of the season hold up, if the better discipline, the really low swinging strike rates, the improved barrel rate, getting better at pulling the ball, if he's someone who can, kind of find himself and make himself kind of more league average in terms of his whiff rate and his chase rate, which he's shown he can do at the minor league level, this could be a player who puts up really good offensive numbers. And as you mentioned, he's very versatile defensively and very good defensively at those positions, right? Obviously, you would like to have Cabrera flexible so you can move him around, but what's necessarily stopping the Yankees from, potentially putting him at shortstop, on opening day in 2023 or at second base on opening day in 2023? He's a really skilled player. I really like what he brings to the table offensively. He's a guy who he tends to rely on pull side power to get his home runs, even though, because he doesn't really have naturally great power. But in Yankee Stadium with that short right field porch and even left field down the line, it's pretty short. Having that pull side power is a benefit. And, he's shown that he can handle, being a full-time player. He started for most of the games down the stretch when he came up. There are concerns about velocity. He does not handle high velocity well. He seems to be late on those pitches, but that could be something he adjusts as he gets better, as he finds more time at the major league level. We saw him, crush baseballs at the AAA level in terms of his power. His home run rates were very high. This is a guy who I look at as someone who can be a 3 to 4 win player, which a 3 to 4 win player is pretty good, right? Like we're talking about a pretty good player, right? And a lot of that value is going to come from his defense. If we say, okay, maybe he gets a little better offensively, maybe we're pushing a 5 WAR player here. We're talking about all-star caliber guy, a guy who's, the second or third best player on a championship team. I'm really excited to see what Cabrera's progression looks like. He's a switch hitter. He's very versatile. He's kind of just this super glue type of guy for any roster. He came out of nowhere after the 2020 season where he, wasn't a highly regarded prospect. After 2019, there was no COVID, there's no minor league season 2020. And in 2021, he kind of bursts onto the scene, gets all the way up to AAA. I'm really excited to see him play. I think this is a guy the Yankees can't trade. Not like he's untouchable, but they should not look to go out and trade him. This is a guy I think is a big part of this team next year. And this is a guy I'm very excited about because I'm a big fan of his. And I think the profile just suits what the Yankees need.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's bordering on untouchable unless someone gives the Yankees an unbelievable deal for him. But the value that he brings to this team, you mentioned it. His slugging, he has potential there. He is able to fill a multitude of different defensive alignments, and he's a spark plug in there. If he could be 4 or 5 wins type of guy, as you said, there's a lot of value to that. But what I see for him is there's even additional value in the sense that he will help other players excel. You know what I mean? And notably, the one guy I have in mind, or two guys I have in mind, first of all, DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu can finally just plug in and play second base. You know what I mean? Like they don't need DJ to be playing third base and first base and second base and wherever it might be. They could have Oswaldo Cabrera fill that role. Maybe first base DJ is your primary second option, and Oswaldo could fall right back into that second base role, especially if they trade Gleyber Torres. But he takes a lot of stress and pressure off of the Yankees when it comes to supplementing deficiencies, because they could move, let's say they keep IKF, they could have him in the hot corner, they could have him as a reserve. You have Volpe coming up, you have Peraza, Volpe as infielders you can kind of play with and mess around with in terms of their alignment. DJ LeMahieu could still be that primary infield utility man. And then you have the outfield locked up because suddenly you have Oswaldo Cabrera who can play left center, he can play right field if you need him to. Obviously, right field is his primary spot. That's where he really excelled during the majority of his reps during the regular season. But having that super utility guy, there's a lot of value to that. You don't have to rely on those, minor league guys that, you don't really trust. You don't have to rely on the Tyler Wades of the world or whatever it might be, or even the Marwin Gonzalez. He's obviously was on the MLB team this year, but he really did not provide much of a spark at all. So, when you're looking at Oswaldo Cabrera, he's a plus bat if he continues to, mount on this progression he's already made. You're talking about a player, what he played 48 total games in the regular season, 44 total games, hit 247 with a 31% on base rate. I mean, really small sample size, 6 homers and 19 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. He was walking at 8.8%. That's not a bad clip by any means. Almost a 26% strikeout rate. So you'd like to see that, get a little bit lower, maybe hit the double digits with walking, but still, I'll take 8.8% for a rookie every day of the year. And 111 WRC plus. He was 11% better than the average player. Most of his value came defensively, but the Yankees need solid defensive players, and ultimately reps are going to help Oswaldo Cabrera. You mentioned that he kind of struggles with high velocity pitching. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy who doesn't even have 200 plate appearances in his professional career. So we have to imagine that will adjust. He will get better as the season progresses. A full year's worth of sample size is going to set him up to be very successful. Those 44 games he played during the regular season really did not allow him to see elite pitching for that long. And then he goes right into the playoffs and has to face off against Justin Verlander, Framber Valdez, Shane Bieber, really good, talented pitchers here. So I think that, letting him get a full season's workload is going to make him so much better. But Ryan, next year projected, let's say they do resign Aaron Judge. Where do you think he starts? Do you even think he's a starter? I think he's really that primary utility guy.
Yeah, so remember, the Yankees are going to, I assume that Peraza and Volpe are going to be considered shortstop options. But, I look at Cabrera and I say, if the Yankees were to move Peraza, hypothetically, right? Cabrera's the stopgap at shortstop, right? Volpe, you imagine, takes over at some point, right? He has to take over at some point. I think the talent is too good there for him not to take over eventually. Why can't Cabrera start at shortstop until Volpe is ready, right? Worst case scenario is he struggles and, that opens up an avenue for Volpe to come up. Or he plays well and you put him in a utility role. He's playing all around. Someone in that lineup's going to struggle. Let's look at the guys we are very confident are going to be back next year. If the Yankees resign Judge, you have Stanton who's going to be there. DJ's going to be there. I imagine I'm not going to look at the catchers because the catchers, obviously, he's not going to be looked at to play that position. In the outfield, you have Bader, right? Those are guys right there, right? So one of those guys are going to struggle, right? That's baseball. In baseball, one of these guys that we assume are not going to struggle, they're going to struggle or they're going to get hurt or something. Coming into this season, did we expect Stanton to play to miss most of the season almost? And when he was here, have stretches where he looked, useless? No. Did we expect that, the Yankees were going to trade for Harrison Bader and lose Montgomery and that you're going to throw Herman in there? No, things happen that are unexpected. Variance is a thing in baseball. It never goes as planned. It never goes as planned. So when we sit here and dream about these lineups for the opening day, when it comes around and, this guy's going to be so good and that guy's going to be so good, right? Baseball's, these guys are human. They're not robots. So they don't just play to their talent level all the time. Some of them overperform. Look at Judge. Judge put up together a historical season when none of us expected it. Was he capable of it? Sure. But you can't project that for a player. That's irresponsible to project. Cabrera gives you that insurance, as you mentioned, with LeMahieu, but he gives you that insurance with every player almost on that team that, if one of these guys are to struggle, if one of these guys are going to have to run into a severe injury, if one of these guys are to just not be someone you can play at that position, Oswaldo Cabrera provides you that insurance. I look at him as someone I can play in the infield. I look at him as someone I can use to stop gap between Volpe. If you trade Glaber, you could put him at second. If you have to move LeMahieu to second and you want Cabrera at third instead because you feel like that's a little bit less of a stress on LeMahieu, you could also do that. Cabrera's got a great arm. If you feel like you don't want to sign a left fielder, you could put Cabrera in left field. If Rizzo gets hurt, you could put Cabrera at first base. If Rizzo gets hurt and you have to move LeMahieu to first base, you could put Cabrera in the infield, right? There are so many different things you can do with Cabrera that it's hard for me to sit here and say this is what his role is going to be from game 1 to game 162. And I think the Yankees are aware of the fact and are conscious of the fact that Cabrera's role in April is not his role in October because baseball changes, things happen. What if a trade in the deadline opens up where Glaber's available and they can move him for someone who's a rental starting pitcher, and that rental starting pitcher is the player, that last piece that puts them over the edge? They're going to make that deal. And Cabrera's suddenly going to become a full-time second baseman. They would take it. So, I don't want to define Cabrera's role exactly. I don't want to put him at one position and say this is where he has to play from game 1 to game 162 because I think that detracts his value and that takes away an insurance piece for the Yankees. The way I look at it is, depending on how the Yankees invest their assets this offseason, whatever spot they leave the least invested is the spot Cabrera is going into. And however Volpe progresses will affect where Cabrera plays. Whether Peraza is here will affect where Cabrera plays. If Peraza is traded, that will affect where he plays. If IKF is traded or Donaldson is traded, that'll affect where he plays. Where Cabrera plays, I don't think we're gonna figure out until March. I'm so confident that this team is going to let Cabrera kind of be this fluid, this player on your roster that can do it all, that they're not going to, anchor him to one position. I feel like that'd be a waste of his talent, a waste of his assets. You can do that with other players in your farm. You don't have to do it with Cabrera. Let him be versatile. That's what he's so good at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, a guy coming in and making such an impact at a position he's never played before is rare. You don't find that very often. You have to continue maximizing that. You have to continue allowing him to develop those skills to continue, building on that talent. He's so young. And I think that's such an asset for the Yankees. And he barely has any service time. I don't even think he accrued any service time this year because they pulled him up after. Yeah. So they have 2 minor league options. They're never going to use those. But he's 23 years old. He'll be 24 next season. No service time. Now is the time to maximize every ounce of value they can get from him, unless a team comes calling and they're willing to give up maybe a Pablo Lopez straight up deal for Oswaldo Cabrera. Then you're like, okay, I have to listen. But most other trades, you're like, I don't think that I can listen. He's such a valuable piece to this team. He can play almost every position. And the Yankees have had so many injuries over the years. Having a guy like this, a young player that, has been reliable, that seems to be reliable and has a lot of potential offensively, you can't really put a price tag on that. So I'm excited to see what his role continues to develop into being, and ultimately he is a young asset for this team that they need to extrapolate on, they need to utilize, and they need to maximize at this point in time. So really, really hyped for his future. But guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments about Oswaldo Cabrera, how you think he's going to play a part and be kind of part of this overarching puzzle for the Yankees and where he should feature. Always happy to hear your opinions below. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.